This will be lesson number 2 in our music theory fundamentals. Now, in the first lesson, we talked about the treble clef and the bass clef and the notes that belong to each line and to each space for both of those clefs. So the lines of the treble clef are E, G, B, D, F, and the spaces are F, A, C, and E. The lines for the bass clef are G, B, D, F, and A, and the spaces are A, C, E, and G. So if you need refreshing on that material, I suggest you go out and check out lesson number 1 first, because everything in music theory builds on what was taught previously. In the previous lesson, we had talked about how there are 7 letter names that belong to music, and that is A, B, C, D, E, F, and G, and that once you get to G, the cycle continues, and it goes A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, D, E, F, and G. There are only 7 letter names that we use. However, you might be thinking to yourself, okay, there's C, there's D, there's E, there's F, and there's G, and there's A, but I've heard people talking about C sharps, and B flats, and F sharps, and G flats, and A flats. So where does that come in? This video will cover that. There are 7 letter names that we use for music. However, there are actually 12 pitches within 1 octave. So if you look at a piano and you look for a group of 2 black keys right here, I've got a little piano drawn out on the board here. If you look at a piano and look for a group of 2 black keys, the white key right before this first black key is a C. So this note right here is a C. Each white key goes up 1 letter name in the alphabet. So after C in the alphabet, there's D. After D, there's E, E, F, G, A, B, C, D, and it goes on and on. And if you look, there are 12 notes that belong to this 1 octave. You got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. So you have 12 notes in 1 octave. And it's the same for this up here as well. C, D, E, F, G, A, and B are referring to the white keys, but there are 5 additional black keys within that octave. So you got 7 white keys and 5 black keys. What we learned to identify in the previous lesson were actually the white notes of the piano. So all of the notes that I have written up here are referring to the white notes on the piano. And I'll play this, for example, starting at middle C right here, the first ledger line below the treble clef. It's also the 4th C on the piano. In order to find middle C, you should look for a group of 2 black keys at the bottom of your piano. So look for the first grouping of 2 black keys at the bottom of your piano, assuming it is a full-sized 88-key piano. Find that first C below the first grouping of 2 black keys, and then count up to the 4th grouping of 2 black keys, and then 1 pitch before that black key will be middle C. So this is middle C right here on the piano. I'm going to play each white key on the piano from C all the way up to this C right here. C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. And then going back down, C, B, A, G, F, E, D, C. So I just played all these white pitches going up and then all these white pitches going back down. There were only 7 white notes that I played, 7 unique white notes. Obviously I repeated C at the top, but I didn't play these 5 black keys. So now here's what that same octave would sound like if I add the black keys. C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, C, B, A, G, F, E, D, C. So I didn't give the names of those pitches yet, But now we are going to talk about what the names of these black keys are. In order to give the names of these black keys, we need to use what are called accidentals. And I've got all 5 symbols drawn up here. The first accidental that you will encounter is a sharp. So this right here is a sharp. I'll give the names of all of these first, and then we'll talk about each one. This is a sharp. This is a flat. This is a double sharp. Alright, so if you're picking up on the series, this is a sharp, this is a flat, this is a double sharp. This one is a double flat because it's just got this same flat symbol twice. Double flat. Now we got this last symbol right here, and it is called a natural. Before we talk about each of these accidentals, I want to briefly go over half steps and whole steps. There are 12 pitches that belong to one octave. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. The distance from pitch number 1 to pitch number 2, and from pitch number 2 to pitch number 3, and from pitch number 3 to pitch number 4, the distance from 2 pitches side by side is a half step. So the distance from C right here to this unnamed pitch right now, the distance from C to this pitch right here is a half step. And the distance from this unnamed pitch right here to D is also a half step. So we got half step, half step, half step, half step, and then half step right here. It's just the next note in order. Half step, 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 half step. So if that's a half step, think about what a whole step would be. A whole step would be the distance from one pitch, skipping this pitch in between, and then going to here. So the distance from C to D is a whole step. We skip this unnamed note for now. We skip that note and then go to D. The distance from D to E is another whole step because we're skipping this unnamed pitch right here in the middle. The distance from E to this note, this black key right here, this first black key in this group of 3 black keys, from E to this pitch right here is a whole step because we're skipping this pitch right here. And then the distance from this note to this next black key is another whole step. We're skipping this G in the middle. And then the distance from this black key to this black key is another whole step because we're skipping this white key in the middle. And the distance from this note to C would be another whole step, skipping this B right here in the middle. So half steps is just referring to the distance from one note to the next note right next to it. To get the distance of a whole step, you need to skip one pitch. So C to D, D to E, E to this black key to this black key, this black key to that black key, and this black key to this note up here, this C right here. So we got half steps and whole steps. Now we will talk about what each one of these accidentals does to a pitch. If you see a pitch like this, so we got a D drawn right here. If you see a D with a sharp sign next to it, a sharp sign raises a pitch by a half step. Therefore, if we go to D in our piano right here, D, and with a sharp sign in front of it, that raises that D up a half step. So this pitch would be a D sharp. D, raise up a half step, D sharp. So this note right here is a D sharp. So that was one example of a sharp. Let's do another sharp. So F sharp. Let's draw an F sharp right here. If we go down to our piano to F, what happens if we put a sharp sign next to that F? We get this pitch right here. That sharp raises that F up by a half step. So this black key right here, this first black key in this group of 3 black keys, this note is an F sharp. So F sharp. Let's draw another sharp. Let's draw a G sharp right here. Let's go down to G on the piano. This note right here is a G. What happens if we raise G up a half step? We get this note right here, G sharp. It's this middle black key in this group of 3 black keys. So this middle black key right here is a G sharp. Let's do A sharp now. If we go down here to A and raise it up a half step, that is our A sharp right there. The 3rd black key in this grouping of 3 black keys here. So that's our A sharp. Put a sharp sign next to that A right there, and that is indicating an A sharp. Let's do C sharp now. So let's draw our C and put a sharp sign before it. We got C right here, raised up a half step. That would be this pitch right here, this first black key in this grouping of 2 black keys. So this pitch right here is referring to a C sharp. And we got that notated right here. This note would be a C sharp. Now let's do E sharp. E sharp. All right, we got E right here. Let's raise that by a half step. We just go to this next white key. There's no black key in between E and F. Therefore, we have to go straight to the next pitch in line. So E sharp is actually this white key right here. You're thinking, but that's an F. All right, here's where we get into inharmonics. Inharmonics, it's spelled E-N-H-A-R-M-O-N-I-C-S. Inharmonics is when you have 2 names for a pitch that is referring to the same pitch. What do I mean? Well, this F right here, not only could it be described as an F, but as we just saw, it can be described as an E sharp. So this F right here is also an E sharp. These are referred to as inharmonics, when you have 2 different ways of describing the same pitch on the keyboard. And we'll talk about this next inharmonic right here, B sharp. All right, let's draw a B sharp up here. B sharp. Let's go over here to B. A sharp means you're raising up this note by a half step. What happens if we raise B up by a half step? We go to C. Because there's no black key in between B and C, therefore we have to just go to the next pitch directly over. So B sharp, another name for B sharp is just C. So B sharp is the same pitch as a C. B sharp, C. These are inharmonics. Now that we've talked about sharps, let's talk about flats. I can do the same thing to each of these pitches by adding a flat sign next to them. So let's start with E flat. I'll draw an E right here. Sorry if the board's getting a little cluttered. I knew this was going to take up a lot of space. So we got an E drawn here, and we put a flat sign next to it. That lowers this E by a half step. So a sharp raises the pitch by a half step. A flat lowers the pitch by a half step. So let's go to E down here on the piano. What happens if we lower E by a half step? We get this pitch right here. You may be thinking, this pitch right here is also a D sharp. And that is right. That's another inharmonic. E flat and D sharp are both referring to the same note. D sharp and then E flat. These are just 2 ways of thinking about the same pitch. We can add a flat sign to each of these notes just like we did with the sharps. Let's draw a D flat now. All right, we got a D right here. Add a flat sign next to it. Let's go down to D on the piano. What happens if we add a flat to a D? Well, we lower it by a half step, so we get this black key right here. This black key is also C sharp. So D flat and C sharp are enharmonics. Enharmonic equivalents, as we would also call it. They are the same pitch. They're referring to the same note. And we'll talk about why we have different ways of writing the same note. That'll become really important when we go to writing out scales and talking about key signatures. Beyond the scope of this lesson, but just keep this in the back of your mind for now, because you will understand why we have so many different ways of writing the same pitch. So this D flat is an enharmonic equivalent of C sharp. Let's add a flat sign to F. Let's draw an F here, and then draw a flat sign before it. F flat. All right, what is F flat on the piano? First of all, let's find F. Lower it by a half step. That becomes E. So F flat is an enharmonic equivalent of E. So E and F flat are both referring to the same pitch. All right, let's do G now. G, and add a flat sign next to it. G flat. Let's find G right here. Add a flat sign to G. What does that do to the G? It makes it G flat. So it's this first black key in this set of 3 black keys here. G flat is the same as F sharp. It's an enharmonic equivalent. F sharp, G flat. Both referring to this black key right here. All right, moving on. Let's add a flat sign to A. All right, we got an A drawn there. Put a flat sign in front of it. All right, going down to A right here. What happens if we add a flat sign to A? It lowers it by a half step. So this pitch right here, this middle black key in this group of 3 black keys, that is an A flat. But also, simultaneously, it can be thought of as a G sharp. G sharp, A flat, another enharmonic equivalent. All right, moving on up to the B flat. All right, I draw a B right there and put a flat sign next to it. All right, let's go down to B right here on the piano. What happens if I put a flat sign next to B? It makes it B flat. It makes it this pitch right here. B flat is also the same thing as an A sharp. It's the same pitch it's referring to. So this black key is also a B flat and an A sharp. All right, last but certainly not least, let's talk about C flat. I'll draw it down here because I don't have much room over there. Let's do C flat over here. I'll draw a C right here. And then add a flat sign next to it. What happens if I start at C and then lower it a half step? Well, that is also thought of as a B. So B and C flat are enharmonic equivalents. Remember, we don't have a black key right here to go to, so we have to go to the next pitch down, which is also a white key. So C flat is also thought of as a B. You're like, why wouldn't we just say B then? Why do we have C flat if it's just a B? We'll talk about that when we go to writing scales. All right, so that takes care of sharps and flats. Double sharps and double flats, let's talk about those. If you know that a sharp raises a note by a half step, what does a double sharp do? It raises it by a whole step. So whenever you see a pitch, let's draw a pitch right here and put a double sharp sign next to it. That raises that pitch up 2 half steps. I'm going to erase what we've got so far and then talk about double sharps and double flats. All right, so if we have a pitch, let's draw a C right here. If we have a C and we have a double sharp written in front of that C, what does a double sharp do to that C? It raises it by 2 half steps. So going down here to C, let's raise it by 2 half steps. D. So D and C double sharp are enharmonic equivalents. So C double sharp and D right here are enharmonic equivalents. What happens if we add a double sharp sign to D? All right, let's draw a D right here and then add a double sharp. D plus 2 half steps, D, D sharp, E. So D double sharp and E are inharmonic equivalents. What about E double sharp? Let's draw an E right here and put a double sharp next to it. If we start right here at E and raise E up by 2 half steps, we get to F sharp. So E double sharp and F sharp are inharmonic equivalents. Let's do F double sharp now. All right, we're here at F. We raise that up by 2 half steps. 1, 2. You can also think of it as the note G. So F double sharp is an inharmonic equivalent of G. All right, let's add a double sharp to G. G double sharp. Add 2 half steps to G. It's an inharmonic equivalent to A. So G double sharp and A are inharmonic equivalents. All right, let's draw an A right here. A double sharp right next to it. So when we add the double sharp sign to A, that raises A up by 2 half steps. So A double sharp and B are referring to the same pitch. And I'm running out of room here. I want to cover B double sharp before we go on. All right, we got a B right here. What happens if we add a double sharp sign next to it? That B turns into a C sharp. So B double sharp and C sharp are inharmonic equivalents. B sharp and C sharp are inharmonic equivalents. All right, moving on to double flats. All right, let's draw a C right here and add a double flat to C. So what happens if I add 2 flats to C? Well, a double sharp, what a double sharp does is it raises it by 2 half steps, or also called a whole step. 2 half steps is also called a whole step. A double sharp raises it by a whole step. A double flat lowers it by a whole step. So C down a whole step, C down a whole step or 2 half steps is this black key right here. So C double flat is an inharmonic equivalent of B flat. All right, so that's a C double flat. What about a D double flat? And we can have all of these accidentals placed on every note. So D, E, F, G, A, B, and we already covered C. So D, E, F, G, A, and B. Let's put a double flat sign next to each of them. D double flat. What is D double flat? It's an inharmonic equivalent of C. What is E double flat? It's an inharmonic equivalent of D. We'll go through these really quickly. What is F double flat? All right, going down 2 half steps. F double flat. It's the same inharmonic equivalent of E flat or D sharp. So some notes can have 2 inharmonic equivalents. So F double flat is the same thing as an E flat or a D sharp. G double flat, G minus 2 half steps, inharmonic equivalent of F. A double flat, A down 2 half steps, is an inharmonic equivalent of the note G. B double flat, B down 2 half steps, is an inharmonic equivalent of A. Alright, so that takes care of double flats. Now what about natural? I've actually been forcing myself not to say natural because we haven't talked about it yet. Natural is just referring to the white keys on the piano without one of these sharps or flats next to it. So if we have the note C with no sharps or flats written next to it, it is also referred to as a C natural. So C natural. So you can have C natural, D natural, E natural, F natural, G natural, A natural, and B natural. And this is referring to just the white key with no sharps or flats altered to it. You may be thinking, what's the point of having this natural sign next to each of these pitches if this gets the same point across? C and C natural is the same note. D and D natural is the same note. So why do we have the natural signs written there? The natural signs are written primarily to cancel out what a sharp or a flat has done. For example, say you have a melody written out where you have the notes G, F sharp, and then you have another pitch right here afterwards. I want to make that an F natural, but what if I don't have a natural sign written next to it? What if I don't have that natural sign written next to that F? Well, I may be tempted to play this note as F sharp because it was an F sharp right here. So I may see this note right here and think, oh, is that supposed to be an F sharp as well? But to clear up confusion, we add a natural sign next to that. That way you know to play G, F sharp, and then F natural, and not to just stay on the same F sharp. It works for flats as well. Say you have an E flat followed by another E. Well, because this E flat and this E are right next to each other, I want to write a natural sign next to this in order to make it clear that I want to play an E natural and I don't want to just repeat this flat sign. So that's where natural signs come in handy. Natural signs cancel out what any previous sharp or flat has done to a note. So if you've got F sharp followed by another F, in order to distinguish that from the F sharp, we need to draw a natural sign right next to it, if they're in succession like that. Now that we've talked about accidentals, I want to finish up the video by talking about this diagram right here and show you how this is referring to all 88 keys of the piano. Now, on a piano, we have 7 complete octaves. And as we discussed before, an octave has 12 unique pitches. So there are 7 full octaves on a piano and 12 pitches to each of those octaves. So that's 12 times 7, which is 84. And we have an additional 3 pitches at the bottom and an additional pitch at the top. So 12 times 7 plus 3 plus 1 is 88. Now I want to show you how this diagram works right here. Each C that I have written right here is the start of its own octave. So this right here, C4 right here, this is the lowest note in the 4th octave of the piano. Therefore, all the notes that come between this C and this B right here are a part of the 4th octave. Once you get to this next C, this starts the 5th octave. So every note between C and this B right here, it all belongs to the 5th octave. It's the same for each of these octaves right here. Each C is the start of a new octave. So everything from this C to this B right here belongs to the 3rd octave. everything from this C all the way up to this B right here is a part of the second octave. Now the lowest C on the piano, we call that C1, and I'll play it right now. That's the lowest C on the piano. That starts the first full octave of the piano. However, there are 3 additional notes before that first C. B0, B flat 0, and A0. The reason we call them octave 0 is because they don't belong to a full octave. C1 is where the first full octave starts. Now, if you notice, we also have some symbols up here at the top that we need to go over in order to fully understand this diagram. Starting up here at this symbol right here, 15MA, also referred to as quindecima alta. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but quindecima alta, that symbol right there, 15MA, whenever you see that symbol written above some notes, let's say you have some notes going along here in a piece of music, and you see this symbol above it, that is telling you to play these notes 2 octaves higher than it is actually written. Ottava alta means that you play whatever notes are written below this symbol 1 octave higher. Ottava bassa means that you play the notes above this symbol, you play that down 1 octave. Quindecima bassa means you play whatever notes are written above this symbol down 2 octaves. So this symbol means play up 2 octaves. That means play up 1 octave. This means play down 1 octave. And this means play down 2 octaves. The reason we have these symbols is to prevent a bunch of ledger lines. So if you notice right here, on C7, I have an ottava alta written. Because you may be looking at this diagram and you're like, well, all these are the same C. This ottava alta and this quindecima alto is telling us that these are actually different Cs. So whenever we have this C right here with an ottava alta written above it, that's telling us that we need to play this C an octave higher. And this symbol right here is telling us to play that C 2 octaves higher. Because you can see, if we didn't have this symbol right here, we'd be having a bunch of ledger lines. And especially for this one, we'd be drawing several ledger lines. So I want to start right here at C4 and play each of these octaves. Alright, so here's C4. Every pitch found between C4 all the way up to C5, not including C5, but every pitch found in between here and here is all a part of the 4th octave. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. 12 is right here at this B. So from this C all the way up to this B, that's 12 unique notes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Now, starting the 5th octave, we get 12 more notes from C all the way up to this B right here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. Alright, starting at C6 now. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Alright, now C7. Let's start the C7 octave. Alright, now after we get to this B, we have one additional C above B7. And we call it C8. So that takes care of the treble clef side now. Let's go down to the bass clef side, starting with A0 at the very bottom of the piano. So this is A0, B flat 0, B0, and remember we call it A0, B flat 0, and B0 because it's not part of a full octave. C1 is where we start our first octave. And if you notice, we had 8 VB written under all of that. So that was telling us to play all of this right here down 1 octave. So now that we're here at C1, let's play the first octave of the piano. Alright, that's the first octave. We ended at B1. Alright, now C2. C2 all the way up to B2 right here. Let's count it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Alright, now the start of the third octave. Starting at C3. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Alright, now to C4. So that concludes the bass clef section of this chart. Now the very last thing I will go over in this video, we're going to talk more about these symbols up here by drawing some musical examples. Alright, so let's write a melody where we can apply these symbols. Alright, so let's just draw a random melody here. Alright, we got F, A, G, D, C, G, and A. Let's hear what that sounds like, just as it's written here. Alright, now let's add a symbol to it. Let's add ottava alta to this. Ottava alta means that we need to play all of these pitches up 1 whole octave. So I want to, in fact, draw this same melody as if it were written in its proper octave. So F up 1 octave is this F right here. So when you see this F with an ottava alta written above it, that means you're actually playing this F right here. Alright, let's draw this A right here. Now let's draw this G, followed by this D, and then a C, followed by a G, and then an A. So this right here is one way of notating this right here. So let's play this same exercise up 1 octave. That was ottava alta. What if we have quindecima alta above that? 15 MA right there, indicating quindecima alta. One way of notating quindecima alta is this with ottava alta written above it. Because quindecima alta means that you're not just playing this F, you're playing the F that is 1 octave higher than this F. So if this is 1 octave higher, another full octave higher would be this F right here. But that F is really high, and that uses a lot of leisure lines. So instead of having an F all the way right here, let's put the F right here, and then just indicate to play that up 1 octave higher. So this is what the melody would sound like if you played it up 2 octaves. Alright, that was quindecima alta. Let's do ottava bassa now. Let's draw a melody for the bass clef. You'll typically see ottava bassa and quindecima bassa written on bass clef music, and you'll see ottava alta and quindecima alta written on the treble clef staff. Alright, so let's draw another melody here. Let's say we start at a B, and then we go up to a D, and then jump up to an A, and then down to a G, and then let's say we go to an F sharp, followed by an A sharp, and then a B. Alright? So let's hear how that sounds, just as it's written right there. That's that B right there. Alright, that's what it sounds like, just as it's written. Let's add ottava bassa to that. Alright? So let's play that first B as it's written, and then go down one octave. Ottava bassa means to play down one octave. Alright, now let's play this exercise. Another way to write this music, if we wanted to write it in the intended spot on the bass clef, we would have to start at this pitch right here. Because this B down one octave is this B right here. Alright, let's draw this same melody starting at this B. B, D, A, G, F sharp, A sharp, B. So when we have ottava bassa written under this music right here, you're actually playing these pitches down here. Alright, now what if we have quindecima bassa? What if we have this same music right here with this symbol right here? That's telling us to play this music down 2 octaves. Alright, so instead of starting down here, we start down here. Alright, let's play this same exercise down 2 octaves. Now, what is another way of getting this same idea across? It would be to write it like this, but instead of playing it 2 octaves lower, because we've already gone down 1 octave from what was originally there, we'll just write it to indicate 1 octave lower than this. So, ottava bassa right here. Ottava bassa for this music is the same thing as quindecima bassa for this music right here. It gets the same idea across. So that will conclude lesson number 2 of Music Theory Fundamentals. We first of all started talking about accidentals such as sharps and flats, and double sharps and double flats, as well as naturals. So just a brief overview of each one. Sharps raise a pitch by a half step. Double sharps raise a pitch by 2 half steps. Flats lower a pitch by a half step. Double flats lower a pitch by 2 half steps. And a natural cancels out what any other previous accidentals have done to a note. So if you see a C sharp followed by another C, put a C natural next to that C so you don't get it confused with a C sharp. Naturals is just referring to the unaltered white key on the piano. And then we went on to talk about all 88 pitches on the piano, starting from A0 all the way up to C8. And we learned that each C starts a brand new octave. So everything from C1 all the way up to B1 is all part of 1 octave. All those 12 pitches are part of 1 octave. And then everything from C2 all the way up to B2 is part of 1 octave. C3 starts the 3rd octave. C4 starts the 4th octave. And all the way up to C7. C7 all the way up to B7 has its own octave. And then C8 all the way up at the top of the piano is just an additional C at the top of the piano. It doesn't have a full octave associated with it. It's just C8, the last C on the piano. And then we learned what quindecima alta means. That means play whatever music you have written here 2 octaves higher. Ottava alta means play it 1 octave higher. Ottava bassa means play it 1 octave lower. And quindecima bassa means to play it 2 octaves lower. So that will conclude lesson number 2.